The topic that I've been given to speak to you today about is the U.S. surgical resident of 2020. I thought I'd start by just going over a little bit about the differences in our training structure, because I know it is a little bit different than it is in the Netherlands. Our trainees start university at age 18, do that for 4 years, and then go on to medical school after that for another 4 years. And those two areas in green are both unfunded, so they're funded by the trainees themselves privately. There's no federal support. After medical school, our residency training in general surgery is 5 years, and then this can be followed by between 1 and 6 years of either postgraduate research training plus or minus subspecialty training, and about 90% of our trainees go on to do some kind of combination of these. And so in the United States, surgeons begin their careers between ages 31 to 38. With an average debt of about $180,000, and 80% of them now have a working partner. So obviously these are very important things that play into decisions and influences and who our trainees will be in 2020. I thought I would really spend my time with you today talking about what I see as the influential factors in predicting the U.S. surgical resident of 2020, and I divided these into 3 areas. The influence of our U.S. culture, the influence of our many national regulatory bodies, including the federal government, and our ACGME, which is our Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, and certainly factors involved in Generation Y, or we call them the millennials. So let's look a little bit about the influence of U.S. culture on the 2020 resident. About 100 years ago, Albert Einstein said, the proliferation of tools and the confusion of goals is characteristic of our age. And I thought that, of course, he was very visionary, because if I could use just one word to describe the U.S. today, which word would I choose? And I would say it would be the word more. There are more choices and decisions, more change and stress, more technology, information, and complexity. And wherever we look, we're surrounded by more, always, always more. And this is something that for the rest of my talk I'm going to refer to as progress, because it is progress. I think that I don't know about in the Netherlands, but certainly in the United States, we are not living in our grandmother's world. For instance, a week's worth of the New York Times contains more information than a person saw in a lifetime in the 18th century. It was estimated that 40 exabytes of new unique information was generated worldwide in 2009, which was more than in the previous 5,000 years put together. And I think that there is now very substantial evidence accumulated over a long period of time that we are now living in exponential times due to progress. I think that if you look at an exponential curve, there's actually a linear aspect to the exponential curve before the vertical inflection point. And I think that one of the things that we can say is throughout human history, most humans have experienced life on the linear part of the curve, adding new information and tasks in a 1 + 1 + 1 phenomenon. But this idea of progress in the inflection point of the verticality is something that works by differentiation and proliferation, resulting of everything faster and faster, and it is unidirectional. And I think that we can basically say that life experience now happens exponentially rather than linearly. I think this idea of exponential growth is is a natural phenomenon that's very much part of of the world that we live in many areas, not just what we're talking about today. But this idea of exponential increase, these curves are superimposable, whether or not no matter what you put on the x-axis. So this is looking at pieces of mail or pieces of junk mail, and there are similar growth curves that are essentially superimposable for many both good and bad things in our culture. So how has this affected our lives in the United States? Well, I think that progress in technology, for one, has promised to speed things up, inferring that we'll have more time, but we really don't. We really pedal faster every day. And I think that we can say that the very fundamentals of life in the United States have changed due to this thing called progress. And what this is, the consequences of this for us is that I think that we can say that progress has stolen our work-life balance. And I think this idea of lifestyle or work-life balance, very important for personal development, has now become essential for professional development. And I'm going to bring this concept in a little bit later in my talk. So let's now switch gears and talk about the influence of where we're going of our national regulatory bodies. Again, another quote from T.S. Eliot, almost about 75 years ago. T.S. Eliot said, "Current human endeavor is oriented to finding a system of order so perfect that we will not have to be good." And I think that this really is a perfect description of our ACGME. The bug of progress has clearly bit our ACGME, and again, all of these things are very, very good. But you can see I'm not going to go through the intent of this slide was really not to go through all of these different bullet points, but really more to engender a visceral response of the outpouring of new regulatory requirements that we have had to incorporate into surgical education in the United States. And I think another example of this is in surgical innovation in terms of the training time. Our training time has not changed, it's still 5 years, and yet the skills that we're trying to teach our trainees have really multiplied. And so, for instance, back in, I trained in the early days of laparoscopic surgery, but just prior to my era, our surgeons train finishing with about 1,100 cases, and these used to be just open. Now they're finishing with those same 1,100 cases, but they're really split up into some open, some laparoscopic, robotic, single port, et cetera. I think another major influence on where we're going to be going in the United States is in our two things, and that is certainly our healthcare reform, which I think is really finally going to happen. And I think this has already had a major impact in the United States on really focusing on quality, safety, and efficiency. Very, very good things. But I think that it's also focused in a different way on push to capture reimbursements, which is also having some negative, I think, implications for surgical education. I think another very important factor is that in the United States, education does not really have a funding source. And I'm not really going to talk about the details about this, but this is really a very significant influencing factor. So now let's switch gears one final time and talk about the U.S. millennial. I think you can each find yourself on this table, and I'm in the Cusper group. But I think that we all know that the different generations are motivated by different things, have different values, and I think that this is obviously true very much of the millennials, and certainly the group that we're training now that are going to be residents in 2020. And I'd like to really focus a little bit on the idea of the focus on individual first and mentoring, their need for or value, very much value of mentoring and lifestyle. So over in the United States, we've had a very significant decline in people interested in going into general surgery, and most studies have really pointed to the negative factor of lifestyle problems in general surgery. I think that we are also seeing about 50% of our medical students are women. And I think putting these two ideas together, if we need surgeons, and we absolutely do, and half of medical school applicants are women, and they are, then we are going to need to attract women into general surgery in the United States to keep general surgery viable. But I think that this idea of lifestyle and surgery, as I showed in the that first table, that table was not just about women. It was really about, it's both women and men. It's really a generational thing. This is not just about gender or sex. And I think that one of our associate executive director of the American Board of Surgery, Jo Beiske, I think said it really well. She said, surgery has developed over time around a paradigm of ambitious, committing people who have had the luxury of having someone else take care of all of their non-surgical responsibilities at home. That person, whether a male or female, relieved of other tasks, barely exists anymore, so the entire future of our field is predicated upon a surgeon who has died. And so I think coming back to this idea, why all the emphasis on mentoring and lifestyle in the United States trainees, well, I think that, again, I think that there is really substantial evidence that shows that the millennials really have been born in this exponential, or this vertical area of the progress exponential curve, and that that what they're doing is they've developed this focus on lifestyle is really a survival tool that they have developed of the technology age. So technology really tends to bring people apart from each other, from real human relationship development. And I think what they're doing is they are reacting to the need for human relationships by offsetting all the wonderful technology that we have, and with their very intense focus and significant value on mentorship, community, and the need for work-life balance. I think this is another way, really, to say then the same thing, that in previous generations, many people would say, my work defines who I am. But for the current generation, they really say, who I am defines how I do my work. And so, therefore, this time for personal development, lifestyle, work-life balance, is absolutely critical for professional development for all of these reasons. And I think the reason that they focus on it so much, and I think the reason why we need to focus on it so much, because I think it's very important. So my predictions for who the U.S. surgical resident of 2020 is going to be, well, for one thing, I think that if they do not already have an exponential frame of reference, I think that they're going to get one. And I think this idea of changing our mindset and helping them to change their mindset from this linear to an exponential is going to be essential. And I think that that part of this is, as an essential survival tool, is going to be the need to be very deliberate about keeping things simple, not only in their personal lives, but also in surgical education and how we choose to train them. And the alternative is becoming reactive and just getting swept along in the exponential tide. So my predictions, I think that we will succeed in the U.S. To attract about 50% women, because I think we're going to need to. I think that the focus on team-based care, which has really come to us along with the 80-hour work week, a very, very significant focus, a very different change in how we do medicine and surgical education is going to continue. I think that work hours, we have settled out to about 80 hours a week. My prediction is that we're probably going to hang out at this level. I think there are many, many reasons why I think that we are not going to go down further. We'll see in 2020 whether I'm right or not. But I think that we are going to stick there. I think that as I've explained to you, I think that the emphasis on lifestyle and work-life balance as a part of professional development, an important part, is really going to continue, and I don't think that that's going to go anywhere. And I think it is important for us to embrace and help with. I think that there's already been a significant upswing in simulation and structured learning outside of the operating room in the United States, certainly in our center, and I think this is going to only continue to increase. And finally, I think that we've already started this idea of early specialization. I think that that is also going to continue. And we have finally developed a national curriculum, and I think that this is going to eventually take us, maybe by 2020, to the place of competency-based advancement rather than time-based advancement in surgical education. I think that one of the, I would say, negative emphases or over-emphases from the ACGME has been a really an increase in supervision of our trainees. That's I think, unfortunately, is almost a little bit stifling sometimes, and I think is leading to some delayed maturation of our resident trainees. And I actually, unfortunately, don't see that this is going to reverse, and so I think this is an unfortunate thing, but I see that this is going to continue. However, I think that the very strong focus on evidence-based medicine, which has already begun as our national healthcare reform has kind of picked up speed, is wonderful new emphasis, and I think is going to continue. And this little example I gave on the side is a tool that we've recently developed. It's a point-of-care evidence-based medicine tool that's used on a handheld device, and so I think things like this are really going to take off. So I'd like to thank you all again for inviting me, and I'd like to take any questions. So thank you.